Welcome to Cosmo Publishing. You just tuned yourself to the coolest place to learn all about self-publishing. We are a turnkey quality service provider, from interior formatting to custom covers and everything in between, including book marketing and advertising. It is the company that books a lot.
Welcome to the Cosmo Publishing Podcast, the place where we explore every corner of self-publishing, from writing and formatting to marketing and distribution. I'm your host, Gürhan, co-founder of Cosmo Publishing and Cosmodio books. Together, we provide complete publishing solutions, everything from manuscript formatting and custom cover design to global distribution, Amazon ads, social media campaigns, and full-service email marketing. Today, we're going to tackle one of the most confusing topics for new authors, ISBNs, the International Standard Book Number. If you've ever researched self-publishing, you've probably stumbled across this term and thought, do I really need one of those? Do I have to pay for it? What happens if I don't? And you're not alone. ISBNs are one of the first stumbling blocks that new authors face. They sound complicated. They look like just a bunch of numbers. And there's a lot of conflicting advice online. Some people will tell you ISBNs are essential. Others will tell you not to bother. And many new authors get so stuck on the question that it delays their publishing journey. But here's the truth. ISBNs aren't scary once you break them down. They're simply a way to identify your book in the publishing world, just like a license plate identifies your car or a phone number identifies your line. Once you understand what they are, how they work, and when you actually need them, the confusion disappears. Let me share a quick story. A friend of mine self-published her first novel on Amazon. She was so excited that she uploaded her manuscript, chose Amazon's free ISBN, and moved on. For a while, everything was fine. But 6 months later, she wanted to sell her book in local bookstores. The stores asked for her ISBN information, and that's when she realized she had no control over the ISBN Amazon had assigned. Her book showed Amazon as the publisher instead of her own name or imprint. She had to go back, purchase her own ISBNs, and republish the book under a new listing. It was messy, confusing, and completely avoidable. On the other hand, I've also seen authors stress way too much about ISBNs before they even finish their manuscript. They spend hours on websites reading about broker agencies and pricing, and they get overwhelmed. The result? They delay actually writing or publishing their book because they think ISBNs are a huge barrier. The reality is that ISBNs are just one piece of the puzzle, and they don't need to be complicated. That's what this episode is about. We're going to take ISBNs apart step by step and explain them in plain, beginner-friendly language. By the time we're done, you'll know exactly what ISBNs are, why they exist, when you need them, when you don't, and how to get them if you decide you do. Here's what we'll cover in today's episode. What an ISBN actually is, explained in the simplest possible terms, the anatomy of an ISBN, and what all those numbers mean, when an ISBN is required and when it is optional, where ISBNs come from and how to get one, how ISBNs apply to different formats like paperbacks, hardcovers, and ebooks, the most common myths and mistakes about ISBNs, and finally, a practical strategy for indie authors who want to know, do I actually need to buy ISBNs or not? And don't worry, this is a For Dummies episode. No jargon, no publishing gatekeeping, no unnecessary complexity. Just a clear, friendly, step-by-step walkthrough with examples and real-life stories. So if ISBNs have ever confused or intimidated you, this is the episode you've been waiting for. By the end, you'll be able to make confident decisions about ISBNs without second-guessing yourself. Grab a notebook, settle in, and let's start demystifying ISBNs together. Section 1. What is an ISBN? So let's start at the very beginning. What is an ISBN? Really? ISBN stands for International Standard Book Number. That's a mouthful, but what it really means is simple. An ISBN is a unique identifier for your book. Think of it as your book's fingerprint. No two are alike. Another way to think of it is like a license plate for your book. Every car on the road has a license plate that identifies it. Without that plate, the car might exist, but it wouldn't be recognized officially by the system. An ISBN works the same way in the publishing world. It tells bookstores, libraries, distributors, and online retailers exactly which book they are dealing with. If you've ever looked at the back of a book, you've probably noticed a block of numbers above the barcode. That's the ISBN. To most readers, it looks like random digits. To the publishing industry, it's how your book is tracked, ordered, and sold. So why does this matter? Because the publishing world is built on systems. Bookstores need to know which edition of your book they're ordering. Libraries need to catalog your book correctly. Distributors need to make sure they're sending the right version. Without an ISBN, your book becomes harder to manage in that system. Let me give you an example. A children's author I worked with tried to sell her book to local libraries. They loved the story, but they asked for her ISBN so they could catalog it in their system. She had uploaded the book to Amazon using only Amazon's free identifier, which isn't the same as an ISBN. The library couldn't add her book to their catalog without one. She ended up having to purchase an ISBN later and republish her book just so the library could accept it. Another way to understand ISBNs is to compare them to a phone number. Every phone number has a country code, an area code, and a unique number that points to one person. ISBNs are structured the same way. They tell you the region, the publisher, and the specific book. You don't need to memorize that structure, but it helps to know that it's not just random numbers. It's a code that identifies your book in a precise way. Now, here's where some confusion comes in. Do you absolutely need an ISBN? The answer is, it depends. If you are only publishing an ebook on Amazon, you don't need one. Amazon assigns its own unique identifier called an ASIN. That works fine within Amazon's ecosystem. But the moment you want your book available outside of Amazon, such as in bookstores or libraries, you'll need an ISBN. That's why it's important to think about your long-term goals before you decide whether to get one. Let me tell you another story. An indie novelist decided to release his first book only on Amazon. He was happy to use the ASIN and skip the ISBN purchase because it saved him money. A year later, he wanted to expand to Ingram Spark to reach bookstores. But since he didn't have his own ISBN, he had to re-upload his book with a new one, which created confusion for his readers and reviewers. Some people couldn't find the correct edition because multiple versions of the book were floating around. If he had started with his own ISBN, that problem wouldn't have happened. So at its core, an ISBN is simply a tool. It doesn't make your book better, it doesn't guarantee sales, and it doesn't magically put your book on bookstore shelves. What it does is give your book a place in the system. It makes your book recognizable, cataloged, and trackable by the industry. And think of it like this. If your book is a person, the ISBN is the ID card. Without it, you can still exist, but you won't show up in the official records. With it, you're part of the network, easy to find and easy to reference. Now that we've cleared up what an ISBN actually is, we can move into the details of how it's structured, because once you understand the parts of an ISBN, you'll see why every book and every format needs its own number. Section 2, Anatomy of an ISBN. Now that we know what an ISBN is in simple terms, let's look at how it's actually built, because those 13 digits on the back of a book aren't random. They each serve a purpose, and once you understand the parts, ISBNs stop looking like a mystery and start making sense. An ISBN is made up of 4 main parts. First is the prefix, which shows that the number is indeed part of the ISBN system. Today, that prefix is usually 978 or 979. If you've ever noticed that a lot of books start with those numbers, now you know why. Second is the group identifier. This tells you the language or country of origin for the book. For example, English-speaking regions like the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and Australia share certain group codes. Other countries have their own. It's a little like the country code on a phone number. Third is the publisher code. This part identifies who published the book. If you're a big publishing house, you have a block of numbers assigned to you. If you're an indie author who buys ISBNs through Bowker in the United States, Bowker assigns you a smaller code. This part is important because it's what connects the ISBN to you or your imprint. Fourth is the title identifier. This piece is unique to each specific book and edition. It tells the system exactly which book this ISBN belongs to. If you write a series, each book in the series will have its own title identifier. Finally, there is the check digit. This is the last number in the sequence, and it's calculated by a formula to make sure the ISBN is valid. You don't need to know the math behind it, but it's essentially a way for the system to double-check that the ISBN hasn't been mistyped. Let me give you an example. Imagine an ISBN that looks like this: 978-1-4-028-946-2-6. The 978 at the beginning is the prefix. The 1 is the group for English-speaking regions. The 4028 identifies the publisher. The 9462 identifies the specific book. And the 6 at the end is the check digit. When you look at it this way, the ISBN isn't just a long line of numbers. It's an organized code, just like a phone number or a zip code. Each part tells you something about the book's identity. Now, here's the good news for indie authors. You don't need to memorize this structure. You don't need to sit with a calculator and figure out check digits. The ISBN agency does all of that for you. But it's useful to know how it works because it gives you a better sense of why ISBNs matter and why each format of your book needs its own unique number. Let's connect this to a real-world situation. I once worked with an author who tried to use the same ISBN for both her paperback and her hardcover. She thought, it's the same book, so why do I need more than one number? But when the book went into distribution, the system flagged it as a duplicate. That's because the title identifier part of the ISBN is supposed to represent one specific edition. The paperback and hardcover are 2 different products, so they each need their own ISBN. Another example, an author released a novel as an ebook and skipped the ISBN because Amazon didn't require it. Later, she decided to release a paperback. The paperback got its own ISBN, which was fine. But when she tried to link the ebook and paperback together outside of Amazon, the lack of an ISBN for the ebook caused problems. This is where understanding the structure helps. Each format is seen as its own product, and the ISBN is the system's way of telling them apart. Think of it like family members with the same last name. The publisher code is like the family name, showing who the parent publisher is. The title identifier is like the first name, showing which specific child or edition it is. Together, they make the full identity. Without both, things get confusing. So the takeaway here is simple. ISBNs aren't random numbers. They're structured identifiers that make your book findable and trackable in the publishing world. And each format of your book needs its own number, because the system sees each one as a separate product. In the next section, we're going to answer a question that every beginner has. Do you really need an ISBN at all, or can you skip it? That's where things get interesting, because the answer depends on your goals as an author. Section 3. Do you need an ISBN? Now that you understand what an ISBN is and how it's structured, let's tackle the big question most new authors have. Do you actually need one? The answer is it depends on your publishing goals. Some authors absolutely need ISBNs, and others can publish successfully without them. The trick is knowing which camp you fall into. Let's start with Amazon. If you're publishing an ebook on Amazon, you do not need an ISBN. Amazon gives your ebook a unique identifier called an ASIN. That number works inside Amazon's system, and it's all you need to sell your book on their platform. Many indie authors publish ebooks this way, and it works perfectly fine. But here's the catch. That ASIN is only recognized by Amazon. If you want your ebook distributed to other platforms like Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, or Kobo, those companies will expect an ISBN. Amazon won't stop you from publishing without one, but the rest of the publishing world might. Now let's talk about print. If you're publishing a paperback or hardcover, you'll almost always need an ISBN. That's because bookstores, libraries, and distributors rely on ISBNs to track physical books. Without one, your print book won't look official to them. Amazon does offer free ISBNs for paperbacks and hardcovers. That can be tempting, especially if you're on a budget, but there's a trade-off. When you use Amazon's free ISBN, they are listed as the publisher of record, not you. The book will still be yours, but the official database will show Amazon instead of your name or imprint. For some authors, that doesn't matter. For others, especially those building a brand or a publishing company, it can be a big deal. Let me give you a real-world example. I worked with a self-help author who launched her first book using Amazon's free ISBN. The book did well, but a year later she wanted to sell copies through independent bookstores in her city. The stores refused to order it because the ISBN showed Amazon as the publisher. She had to buy her own ISBNs, republish the book, and start fresh with a new edition. It was a hassle she could have avoided by using her own ISBN from the start. On the other hand, I've seen new authors stress way too much about ISBNs before they even finish writing. They spend hours researching Bowker, pricing, and distribution rules. They get so overwhelmed that they delay publishing their book entirely. That's not the right move either. ISBNs are important, but they're not worth derailing your progress over. So, how do you decide? Here's a simple way to think about it. If you're publishing only on Amazon, and you're not worried about bookstores or libraries, you can safely skip buying your own ISBNs. Amazon's system will take care of you. If you want your book in bookstores, libraries, or multiple online retailers, you should plan to get your own ISBNs. That way, you'll be the publisher of record, and your book will be recognized across the industry. There's another important thing to know. Each format of your book requires its own ISBN. That means your ebook, your paperback, your hardcover, and even your audiobook each need separate ISBNs if you want them officially cataloged. Some authors try to reuse one ISBN for multiple formats, but that creates problems because the publishing system treats each format as a different product. We'll go deeper into that in a later section. But for now, just remember that one book can have multiple ISBNs depending on how many versions you publish. Let me share one more story. An indie novelist released his first book as an ebook on Amazon with no ISBN. Sales were okay. Later, he added a paperback and used Amazon's free ISBN. Everything was fine until a local library asked about ordering his book. They couldn't catalog it without a proper ISBN that connected back to the author. He had to go back, buy ISBNs, and update his listings. The lesson he shared with me afterward was simple. If you want your book to go beyond Amazon, invest in your own ISBNs early. The bottom line is this. ISBNs are not mandatory for every situation, but they are a smart investment if you see yourself as a long-term author. If you're testing the waters with your very first ebook on Amazon, don't let ISBNs slow you down. Publish, learn, and grow. But if you're serious about building a career, selling wide, or reaching libraries and bookstores, having your own ISBNs gives you control, flexibility, and credibility. In the next section, we'll dive into where ISBNs come from and how to get them. This is where we'll talk about Bowker, national agencies, pricing, and whether you should buy ISBNs individually or in blocks. Section 4, where do ISBNs come from? Now that we've answered whether you really need an ISBN, the next logical question is, where do ISBNs actually come from? Who makes them? Who decides the numbers? And how do you get one if you need it? The simple answer is that ISBNs are issued by national ISBN agencies. Each country or region has its own official agency that manages ISBNs. In the United States, that agency is Bowker. If you live in the UK, it's Nielsen. In Canada, ISBNs are free through the government. Different countries have different systems, but the principle is the same. Each agency controls the ISBNs for its region and assigns them to publishers and authors. For most indie authors in the United States, Bowker is the place where you go to buy ISBNs. Their website, myidentifiers.com, is where you can create an account, register your publishing imprint, and purchase ISBNs. Once you buy one, it's yours forever. You assign it to a specific book and format, and it cannot be reused once published. Now let's talk about cost, because this is where many beginners are surprised. Bowker sells ISBNs individually for $125 each. That sounds expensive, and it is, if you're planning to publish multiple formats or multiple books, but Bowker also sells them in blocks. A block of 10 costs around $295. A block of 100 costs even more, but it brings the per ISBN price down dramatically. Here's the math. If you buy a single ISBN for $125, that covers one format of one book. If you publish your book as a paperback and an ebook, you'll need 2 ISBNs, which means $250. If you later add a hardcover, that's another $125. Suddenly, your ISBN costs are higher than your editing or cover design budget, but if you buy a block of 10, you spread the cost across multiple projects. That means you can publish your book in several formats and still have leftover ISBNs for your next project. That's why many indie authors choose to buy a block, even if they only need a few right away. Let's compare that with other countries. In Canada, ISBNs are free, which makes Canadian authors very lucky. In the UK, Nielsen sells them, and their pricing is structured differently. The important takeaway is this. The cost depends on where you live, but in the US, you should plan for ISBNs to be part of your publishing budget if you want to control them yourself. Now let's look at the alternative. Free ISBNs. Amazon offers free ISBNs for paperbacks and hardcovers. At first glance, that seems like the perfect solution. You don't have to spend a dime. Your book gets an ISBN, it looks official, and it sells fine on Amazon. But there's a catch when you use Amazon's free ISBN. Amazon is listed as the publisher of record. That means when someone looks up your ISBN in Bowker's database, they'll see Amazon's name, not yours. The book is still yours, but officially the publisher is Amazon. For some authors, that doesn't matter. If you're only planning to sell on Amazon and you don't care about branding, the free ISBN works fine. But if you want to build your own publishing imprint or expand to bookstores and libraries, having your own ISBNs gives you control and credibility. Here's a real-life example. I worked with a historical fiction author who used Amazon's free ISBN for her paperback. The book sold well online, but when she tried to get it into local bookstores, the owners refused. Why? Because when they looked up the ISBN, it showed Amazon as the publisher. Independent bookstores don't want to order books through Amazon, so they declined. She had to republish the book under her own ISBNs to fix the problem. Another thing to consider is long-term control. When you own your ISBNs, you control the metadata. Metadata includes details like the publisher name, categories, keywords, and book description. That information travels with your ISBN wherever the book is sold. With free ISBNs, you don't have as much control over those details. So what's the best strategy? If you're serious about building a publishing career and want your books available widely, invest in your own ISBNs through Bowker or your national agency. If you're testing the waters with a single book on Amazon, you can start with a free ISBN and upgrade later. Just know that upgrading usually means republishing your book with a new ISBN, which can cause confusion and split reviews across editions. I once consulted with a children's book author who had published 3 books with free ISBNs. Later, she decided to create her own small press imprint. She had to pull all 3 books, buy new ISBNs, and relaunch them. It was a lot of extra work that could have been avoided if she had purchased a block of ISBNs from the beginning. The key takeaway is this. ISBNs come from official national agencies. In the U.S., that's Bowker. They can be expensive if you buy them one at a time, but buying in blocks saves money in the long run. Amazon offers free ISBNs, but those come with trade-offs in terms of control and branding. In the next section, we'll look at how ISBNs apply to different formats. Because here's where many new authors get tripped up. They think one ISBN will cover their ebook, paperback, and hardcover. In reality, each version of your book needs its own ISBN. Let's break that down step by step so you don't make common mistakes. Section 5, ISBNs and formats. Now that we know where ISBNs come from and how to get them, let's talk about one of the most confusing parts of the process, how ISBNs connect to different formats of your book. This is where a lot of beginners make mistakes. They think, I already bought one ISBN, so that should cover everything, right? Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Each format of your book needs its own ISBN. That means if you publish your book as an ebook, a paperback, a hardcover, and an audiobook, you need 4 separate ISBNs. The reason is simple. In the publishing industry, each format is considered a separate product. Your paperback is not the same product as your ebook, even though the words are the same. Your hardcover is not the same as your paperback because the binding, price, and distribution are different. An ISBN is tied to one product, one edition, one version. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're writing a fantasy novel. You decide to release it as an ebook, a paperback, and a hardcover. The ebook gets one ISBN. The paperback gets a second ISBN. The hardcover gets a third. If you later release an audiobook, that requires a fourth. Each one is a unique identifier for that version. Why is this so important? Because bookstores, libraries, and distributors need to know exactly what they are ordering. If a library orders the hardcover, they want the hardcover to arrive, not the paperback. If a bookstore lists the paperback in their catalog, the ISBN tells them exactly which product to stock. Without separate ISBNs, everything gets messy. I once worked with an author who tried to use the same ISBN for both her paperback and her hardcover. She thought she was saving money. But when her distributor tried to list the book, the system flagged it as an error. The ISBN was pointing to two different products, which is not allowed. She had to go back, buy another ISBN, and republish the hardcover. It delayed her launch by months and cost her sales. Here's another common question. Do ebooks need ISBNs? On Amazon, the answer is no. Amazon assigns its own ASIN to your ebook, and that's enough to sell it there. But if you want to distribute your ebook to other platforms like Apple Books or Kobo, you'll need an ISBN for it. Some distributors will assign you a free ISBN, but again, that usually means they are listed as the publisher of record. If you want full control, you should assign your own. What about audiobooks? Audiobooks also need their own ISBN if you plan to distribute them widely. Many platforms like Audible or ACX can provide identifiers, but if you want your audiobook recognized in catalogs and libraries, having your own ISBN keeps everything consistent across formats. Let's bring this into a real-world story. I knew an author who published a children's picture book. She released it as a paperback and an ebook. She used one ISBN for both, thinking it was fine. When she tried to get her book into libraries, the catalog system flagged her ISBN as invalid because it was assigned to two formats. She had to republish her ebook with a new ISBN, which split her reviews into two separate listings and confused readers. She told me later, if I had just done it correctly from the start, I would have saved myself so much stress. Another thing to remember is that different editions also require their own ISBNs. Let's say you release a first edition of your novel, then a second edition with updated content or new cover. Each edition gets its own ISBN. The first edition keeps its number, and the second edition gets a new one. That way, bookstores and libraries know which edition they're dealing with. Sure, some authors ask if new covers alone require new ISBNs. If the content of the book doesn't change, just the cover, you usually don't need a new ISBN. But if the content changes significantly, like adding new chapters, fixing major errors, or revising the structure, that counts as a new edition and needs a new ISBN. So let's recap this clearly. Each format of your book needs its own ISBN. Paperbacks, hardcovers, ebooks, and audiobooks are all treated as separate products. Each edition of a book also needs its own ISBN if the content changes. You can reuse ISBNs across future projects, but never across formats of the same book. This may sound overwhelming, but once you understand the logic, it's simple. Okay, ISBNs are just labels that keep products organized. Think of it like grocery shopping, a carton of milk, a block of cheese, and a tub of yogurt all come from the same cow's milk. But they are different products on the shelf. Each one has its own barcode. Your book is the same. One story, multiple products, each with its own identifier. In the next section, we'll clear up some of the biggest myths and mistakes about ISBNs. This is where a lot of misinformation trips up new Authors, we'll talk about whether ISBNs make your book official, whether you only need one for your entire career, and why cutting corners with ISBNs can create big headaches later. Section 6, ISBN, Myths and Mistakes. We've talked about what ISBNs are, how they're structured, whether you need them, and how they apply to different formats. Now let's tackle something just as important, the myths and mistakes surrounding ISBNs. This is an area where a lot of misinformation floats around, and many new authors end up making choices that create problems later. Let's start with one of the biggest myths, the idea that ISBNs make your book official. I can't tell you how many times I've heard authors say, I need an ISBN, so my book will be official. That's not true. Your book is official the moment you finish writing it and publish it. The ISBN doesn't give you legitimacy. What it does is make your book easier to track, order, and distribute in the publishing system. Having an ISBN won't suddenly make bookstores line up to stock your book. It's a tool, not a golden ticket. Another myth is that you only need one ISBN for your entire career. Some authors buy a single ISBN and assume they can use it for every book they ever publish. That's not how it works. Each book and each format of that book needs its own unique ISBN. If you publish 3 novels, that's 3 ISBNs at a minimum. More if you have multiple formats. If you also publish nonfiction and children's books, those will need their own ISBNs as well. One ISBN does not cover everything. Here's another mistake I see a lot. Authors trying to save money by using the same ISBN for multiple formats. For example, they assign the same ISBN to both the paperback and the hardcover. At first glance, it feels harmless, but it causes major problems in the distribution system. Bookstores, libraries, and distributors expect every format to have its own number. If you try to use one ISBN across multiple formats, your book will get flagged, your listings may get rejected, and you'll have to republish. I worked with an author who made this mistake, and she lost months of momentum because she had to redo all her files with the correct ISBNs. Another myth is that ISBNs guarantee distribution. Some authors believe that once they have an ISBN, bookstores and libraries will automatically order their book. This is not true. An ISBN is like a phone number. It makes you reachable, but it doesn't make people call you. Having an ISBN is necessary for distribution, but it's not sufficient on its own. You still need marketing, demand, and relationships with retailers to actually get your book on shelves. Then there's the myth that ISBNs are required for all books everywhere. As we've already covered, ebooks on Amazon don't require ISBNs. Amazon assigns an ASIN automatically, and your book can sell just fine with that. So if you're publishing only on Amazon, you can skip buying an ISBN for your ebook. The confusion comes when authors see ISBNs on other platforms and think they must have them for every format. It's about knowing where you plan to sell and what your long-term goals are. Now let's look at another common mistake, using someone else's ISBN. Sometimes new authors are approached by publishing services that offer to assign an ISBN to their book. On the surface, it sounds convenient. But here's the problem. When you use someone else's ISBN, that someone else is the publisher of record. They control the listing in the ISBN database, not you. That can create huge headaches if you ever want to move your book, switch distributors, or change metadata. You'll be tied to them because the ISBN belongs to them, not you. I've seen authors get stuck in bad contracts this way, unable to republish their own book because they don't own the ISBN tied to it. Another mistake is skipping ISBNs entirely when you want wide distribution. An author might save money by publishing only with Amazon identifiers. That works for Amazon, but the moment they want to expand into bookstores, libraries, or global distributors, they hit a wall. Without ISBNs, those channels won't recognize the book. I worked with a nonfiction author who wanted her book in university libraries. She hadn't bothered with ISBNs, and the librarians wouldn't touch it until she republished with proper ISBNs. She lost opportunities simply because she didn't plan ahead. Let's also clear up a myth about discoverability. Some authors believe that having an ISBN makes their book easier to find online. That's not exactly true. Readers on Amazon don't search by ISBN. They search by title, author name, or keywords. ISBNs matter more for systems behind the scenes, like cataloging in libraries or ordering through bookstores. An ISBN won't suddenly boost your visibility on Amazon. What boosts visibility there is keywords, categories, reviews, and ads. Now, does that mean ISBNs are useless? Absolutely not. They are important for professional presentation, for tracking, and for distribution beyond Amazon. But the mistake is expecting ISBNs to do more than they really can. Here's another story to illustrate. A new author invested heavily in ISBNs right away. She bought a block of 100 because she was told she needed them to succeed. But she had no publishing plan. She hadn't finished her first book. A year later, she still hadn't published. And the ISBNs sat unused. The mistake wasn't buying ISBNs. It was focusing on them before she was ready. ISBNs are important, but they should serve your publishing journey, not control it. So what should you take away from all of this? ISBNs are not magic. They don't make your book official. They don't guarantee sales. They don't replace marketing. They're tools that help the publishing industry keep track of books. Used correctly, they give you control and credibility. Used incorrectly or misunderstood, they can waste time and money. In the next section, we'll shift gears from the myths and mistakes to something more practical. We'll talk about ISBN strategy for indie authors. Do you need to buy them? Should you use Amazon's free ones? How many should you get if you plan to publish multiple books? This is where we'll put everything together into a clear step-by-step strategy you can actually follow. Section 7, Strategy for Indie Authors. By now, you understand what ISBNs are, how they're structured, when you need them, where they come from, how they connect to different formats, and the common myths that confuse new authors. That's a lot of ground covered. So let's bring it all together into something practical. Let's talk about strategy. If you're an indie author, what should you actually do about ISBNs? Should you buy them? Should you use Amazon's free ones? Should you wait until later? Let's walk through the options step by step so you can decide what makes sense for you. The first question to ask yourself is this: where do I plan to sell my book? If your plan is to publish only on Amazon, then you can get by without buying ISBNs at all. Amazon assigns an ASIN to your ebook, and they offer free ISBNs for paperbacks and hardcovers. That means you can publish at zero cost when it comes to identifiers. For many new authors who just want to get their first book out there, this is a perfectly fine strategy. Don't let the worry about ISBNs stop you from hitting publish. But what if your goals are bigger? What if you want to see your book in bookstores, libraries, or multiple online retailers like Apple Books or Kobo? In that case, owning your own ISBNs is the smarter choice. Why? Because when you own your ISBNs, you control the publisher name, the metadata, and the long-term identity of your book. Bookstores are more willing to order titles that don't show Amazon as the publisher of record. Libraries also prefer books with ISBNs registered to the author, or an imprint, not Amazon. Here's one way to think about it. If you see yourself as a hobbyist author who just wants to publish on Amazon for fun, free ISBNs will work fine. If you see yourself as a professional author building a career, investing in your own ISBNs is worth it. Now let's talk about how many ISBNs you might need. Remember, each format requires its own. If you publish a novel as an ebook, a paperback, and a hardcover, that's 3 ISBNs. If you later produce an audiobook, that's 4. If you write a series of 3 books, and each book is available in 3 formats, that's 9 ISBNs already. You can see how quickly the numbers add up. That's why many authors choose to buy ISBNs in blocks. In the United States, Bowker sells 1 ISBN for $125. That covers a single format of a single book. But if you buy a block of 10 for around $295, the cost per ISBN drops significantly. A block of 10 is enough for a couple of books in multiple formats. If you're planning to publish regularly, it makes financial sense to buy in bulk. Here's a real example. A self-help author I worked with was planning a 3-book series. She wanted each book available in ebook, paperback, and hardcover. That's 9 ISBNs right there. Instead of buying them one by one for over $1,000, she bought a block of 10 for less than $300. She used 9 right away and saved the last one for her next project. That decision saved her hundreds of dollars and gave her peace of mind, knowing she had the identifiers she needed. Another thing to consider is whether you want to establish your own imprint name. When you buy ISBNs through Bowker or your national agency, you can register them under your personal name or under a publishing imprint you create. Some authors love seeing their own imprint listed in the ISBN database because it looks more professional. Others are fine with their personal name. Either way, the key is that you own the ISBN and control the listing. But what if you're just getting started and money is tight? Here's a strategy I often recommend. For your very first book, if you want to test the waters, you can use Amazon's free ISBN for your paperback and skip buying one for the ebook. Focus on finishing, publishing, and learning the ropes. Then, if you discover that you love publishing and want to keep going, invest in a block of ISBNs for your future books. That way you don't spend hundreds of dollars before you even know if you'll stick with publishing. The biggest mistake to avoid is thinking you have to do it all perfectly the first time. ISBNs are important, but they're not worth paralyzing yourself over. Start with what makes sense for your goals and your budget. If you're aiming small, free identifiers are fine. If you're aiming big, owning your ISBNs is the way to go. So let's recap this strategy clearly. If you are only publishing on Amazon and don't care about bookstores or libraries, use the free identifiers and don't stress about ISBNs. If you want wide distribution and more control, buy your own ISBNs through Bowker or your national agency. If you plan to publish multiple books and multiple formats, buy a block of ISBNs to save money in the long run. And most importantly, don't let ISBNs hold you back from publishing. They're tools, not roadblocks. In the next section, we'll wrap everything up with a recap and a simple action checklist you can follow. We'll take all the details we've covered and boil them down into a clear plan you can carry with you as you publish your first or your next book. Action checklist. We've covered a lot in this episode of the Cosmo Publishing Podcast. We started with the basics of ISBNs, what they are and why they exist. We looked at the structure of an ISBN and broke it down into simple parts. We asked the important question, do you really need an ISBN? And we learned that the answer depends on your publishing goals. We talked about where ISBNs come from, the difference between free and paid identifiers, and why control matters. We explored how ISBNs connect to different formats and why every edition of your book needs its own. We went through some of the biggest myths and mistakes new authors make, and we ended with a clear strategy for indie authors who want to know what to do next. That's a lot of ground, and if you felt confused about ISBNs before this episode, my hope is that you feel much clearer now. ISBNs aren't scary. They're just numbers, identifiers, tools that help the publishing system organize and track books. They don't define your success, but they do play a role in how your book is cataloged, distributed, and perceived. So let's take everything we learned and boil it down into a simple action checklist you can use. First, decide where you plan to sell your book. If your plan is to stay on Amazon only, you don't need to buy ISBNs. Amazon gives you free identifiers that work perfectly in their system. Second, think about your long-term goals. If you want to expand into bookstores, libraries, or other online retailers, owning your own ISBNs is the smarter choice. It gives you control and credibility. Third, plan for your formats. Remember that every format of your book is considered a separate product. That means ebook, paperback, hardcover, and audiobook all need their own ISBNs if you want them officially cataloged. Fourth, if you're in the United States, be prepared for the cost. Bowker sells ISBNs one at a time for $125 or in blocks of 10 for around $295. Buying in bulk saves you money if you plan to publish more than one book. Fifth, don't stress if you're just getting started. If money is tight or you're testing the waters, use Amazon's free identifiers for your first book. Focus on publishing, learning, and gaining confidence. You can always invest in your own ISBNs later once you know you're committed to building a career. And finally, remember that ISBNs are not magic. They don't guarantee sales, reviews, or bookstore placement. What sells books is your content, your marketing, and your connection with readers. ISBNs are simply the labels that help the industry keep track of your work. I'll leave you with one last story. A nonfiction author I worked with was terrified of ISBNs. She thought she needed to buy dozens of them before she could even begin. I told her to relax, publish her first book on Amazon with a free identifier, and learn the process. 6 months later, she was ready for her second book. This time, she bought a block of 10 ISBNs and created her own imprint. Today, she has 4 books published under her imprint name, and she says the scariest part turned out to be the easiest once she understood it. Her words were, ISBNs don't publish books, authors do, so don't let ISBNs intimidate you. Learn what they are, make a smart choice based on your goals, and move forward. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Cosmo Publishing Podcast. I'm your host, Gürhan, and I hope this walkthrough of ISBNs has helped clear the fog and given you confidence. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, share it with a fellow writer, and leave us a review. And remember, at Cosmo Publishing and Cosmodio Books, we're here to help you every step of the way, from formatting and design to distribution and marketing. Until next time, keep writing, keep learning, and keep publishing.
Welcome to Cosmo Publishing. You just tuned yourself to the coolest place to learn all about self-publishing. We are a turnkey quality service provider, from interior formatting to custom covers and everything in between, including book marketing and advertising. It is the company that books a lot.